Welcome, everybody, to County Talk. Everything boring but important, where we talk the nitty gritty issues of the inner workings of the county and your life as a taxpayer here in Montrose County. And we're here to shed light on all the things that you are concerned about with the county. We're going to dive into the unsexy side of government here today. And I'm Sue Hansen. I'm one of your 3 elected commissioners. And I'm here with Keith Caddy. He's the commissioner of District 1, and he's vice chair of our board. Today, we're going to talk about ag. Ag is a big thing in Montrose County. We are big supporters of it. And we thought it would be really interesting to sit down and talk to Keith, since he grew up here and in Colona, and see what his perspective is. And, you might think the commissioners get to talk all the time together, but we don't. And so this will be as interesting for me as it is for you. So, Keith, you grew up in Colona. You were an ag kid. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Colona, and what it was like back in a million years ago.
Well, a million years ago. No, I was raised on a ranch near the town of Colona. My family's been involved in the agricultural business at that time for 4 generations, and raised on our family ranch. And then my grandparents had a ranch just down the road from us, and that's all I knew is agriculture, cattle, sheep, barley production. So we did a little row crop, we did cattle, and then my grandparents did sheep and cattle.
So the biggest part of that ranch was the animal part of it, or what?
To me, it was. I hated the irrigating part.
Oh,
but
you probably had to do it anyway.
I had to do it anyway.
That's what happens when you have a dad around, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So Colona, south of Montrose, for those people that are maybe new to the area, how many acres did you have? Tell me a little bit about the surroundings, what it was like.
Well, we had a 160-acre ranch. We ran about 100 head of cows on it. Grandparents had about 450 acres. They ran a couple thousand head of sheep and about 100 head of cattle. Huh. That's the only life I knew. I was in 4-H. I was in FFA. And at that time, ag was the big economic driver in the community, along with mining. Mining in the west end of Montrose County was big at that time. Along with in Ouray County, mining was also big.
So was it frequent? I always think it's really special when I'm on the road and all of a sudden there's like a zillion sheep that are in my way. And unlike others, I think it's really fun. I just slow down and kind of enjoy the sheep and the bells and all that sort of stuff. Did that happen a lot more back then than it does now?
It did happen a lot more back then because there were a lot more sheep producers. There's a lot more cattle producers at that time. Then that was the way people transported their animals. I know when I was a child, we used to move the cattle from Colona plumb down to Pea Green in the winter for winter pasture. And then in February, we'd move them back to Colona for calving season.
Did you say plum?
Plum too.
Plum down.
I did say plum down.
You did. You went right back into ag talk.
There goes to that, the agricultural community I was raised in. That's my culture. That's my heritage.
So walk me through, I didn't grow up in an ag area. I've come to love it, but I didn't. I just wanted, once you raise your cows and raise the sheep, then what's the next step? What happens next? Do you take them out of town, or do you ship them somewhere? What do you do?
Now we have to ship them almost everywhere. Back then, it used to be a railhead right here in Montrose. You could ship cattle and sheep right out of the stockyards here in Montrose at one time.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't know that we had a sale barn right here in Montrose, and of course that's all gone now.
Where was that?
Just about half a mile north of where we're at right now. And the stockyards were over here, right there where the train tracks are, that empty area. That used to be all stockyards.
Oh, wow. So that goes back a ways?
Probably the stockyards, they were torn out probably in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, that's so your family, essentially, their living was made by farming and ranching, right?
Correct.
That was 100%. So it is interesting how things are changing. And you're a perfect person. You did go away for a while for your work and your career, but when you came back, your family's always been here. In fact, but for all of you who don't know, Keith is related to almost every single person in this county. And which is really interesting. A lot of people are still related to a lot of people in the county. So when you say something about someone, they're like, "Oh, that's my cousin from," and you're like, "Seriously?"
Yeah. The old families, the old agricultural families are still here. A lot of them are,
Yeah, I really wish it was still like that in some ways. So you came from an ag background. You didn't pursue farming yourself. Tell us a little about why you didn't or did, or what you.
Well, my grandparents, my dad, they sold the ranches about the same time I graduated from high school, so I had to really go out and find another way of making a living. So I took a lot of the skills that I'd learned in the ag business, running heavy equipment, running tractors, farm equipment, stuff like that. And I just transferred that into heavy construction
Hmm.
work. So it was an easy transition.
Sure, transferable skills from the farm, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, and I'm guessing that when you were a kid, everybody had to work on the farm. It wasn't like you got to sit on the couch with your phone and play video games, right?
Didn't have video games. And we did have one TV channel, KREY TV Montrose.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah, it was quite the deal.
But I'm guessing that you and your sibling had to,
We did. We all worked.
yeah.
We had our chores. We had, work in the fields, different
Mhm.
things we had to do.
So you showed your animals at FFA at the fair and did that the
Yeah, I
whole
did,
thing?
steers and lambs at the fair. I always did that in
Mhm.
4-H. I was a 4-H member for 9 years, and then I was in FFA for, of course, for 4 years.
Yeah, and FFA plays a large part in our community too, and I know that the folks that run FFA, they're really trying to get more kids involved in that. What do you think? And I think Clover Buds is actually increasing in the numbers. That's the younger kids that get involved in FFA. But what do you think being an FFA kid taught you?
I think, we took a lot of the skills and things we learned and the culture. It just moved over into FFA. It was just part of the ag culture here. If
Hmm.
you were raised on a ranch or a farm or something like that, you were just automatically going to migrate towards FFA and the agricultural type of
Hmm.
education.
Yeah,
It was just part of it.
yeah, yeah. I actually have made an observation. I'm a member of the cattle women, and even though I have no cows, they even let people that have no cows into cattle women. But great group of women. But what I've noticed when we serve at the FFA banquet,
Mhm.
the kids are so polite and they're so. I mean, it's almost like a step back at a time where kids really have a background of growing up where they respect people and they actually know how to communicate with folks. It's just really refreshing to go to those banquets. So yeah, so we're going to serve again. So maybe you want to sign up for that and buy a ticket.
Oh, I could go to the FFA banquet. I used to go to them all the time.
Yeah, yeah. There's always good food there too.
Yep,
So let's just sort of take a step back and think about ag. The county likes to we support ag.
we do.
But what's happening in the farming and ranching business, just sort as globally or as a big picture? What are you seeing happening? Because I know we're seeing some changes.
I think just like in Montrose County, within the state of Colorado and within the United States, we're losing our farm ground. We're losing our farmers. The average age of a farmer now is in the high 50s,
Hmm.
lower, low
I
60
think it's
years of
older than
age.
that.
It's
Yeah,
in the 60s
yeah,
now.
yeah.
I know it continually it's going that way. A lot of the young people aren't getting into farming. A lot of the farmers are going to big corporate farms, uh, which in some ways that might be better for production, but it's not better for the lifestyle and the culture. We're losing that lifestyle and the culture. Right here in Montrose County, from 2017 to 2022, we've lost about 115 farms, ranches here in the community. We've lost irrigated ground, or excuse me, farm ground from 330,000 acres down to 285,000 acres.
Hmm.
A lot of that has now went into like housing developments, things like that. We're losing the culture. We're losing our ag background, and the average size of the farmer the average size of farms are dropping now from
Hmm.
291 acres to 272 acres.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the real issues. I mean, farming is a tough business. It's not. Hard work, and as farmers are getting older and older, it's less and less. They're less able to do all the work that's necessary on the farm. And as kids, just like you, went away to have a different kind of a career. Some kids are choosing that as well. How do you think we can incentivize and help kids get? I mean, besides FFA, continue to get kids involved in ag because it is an important part of our community.
I think ag is very important to the world in general. Just to feed the world, we need people involved in the agricultural business.
Hmm.
One of the things that I see I see two big problems with it. Is the profit margins in ag is so narrow anymore that if there's anything added to it, let's say new federal regulations or state regulations, it cuts into that profit margin to where the farmers can't even make a living. So what do they have to do? They've got to sell to big ag, big corporations, and that's the only way that farms can manage themselves anymore
Hmm.
is you go larger and larger. I've seen that happen more so like in Kansas,
Sure.
Nebraska, where a lot of the small time, wheat farmers and stuff went to big ag producing outfits,
Hmm.
crop
Right.
companies.
Yeah, I think in a way it's really sad. I think it's motivates me, and I know you're very much into this too, is the how can the county help? What is, we're always kind of talking about ways we can do more for the ag community, but right now we do what we can. I know that we do some scholarships. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, here a couple of years ago, we decided to have two $2,500 scholarships going to senior FFA students who are attending ag schools and going into agricultural programs. I think
Hmm.
it's a very good program to get into. We have two of those per year, and we also support agriculture in Montrose County in general. We don't want to make any of our I can't say laws, but a lot of our
Regulations and stuff,
regulations,
yeah.
yeah, that aren't so onerous that it'll affect agriculture because
Hmm.
they don't need to be affected like they are by the federal and state government. They don't need that level of control from
Right.
us.
I know that we've had some discussions with our aerial sprayer here, Felix, and even that business is being impacted because as farmland grows and as we approve more subdivisions, they encroach on that farmland, and so been more difficult for people that are even ancillary suppliers to the ag industry to to continue working. So it is frustrating, and that's directly related to new regulations and increased regulations. And as people move in from areas that are not ag, we seem to get that kind of pressure. So we do the scholarships, which is really cool. And I mean I think that's great for kids. What else do we do? I
Well, at the county fair, that's one of our biggest events we have a year, and we do the county fair so we can sort of let everybody know in the community what is our ag community doing. It's a way of presenting our ag community to the greater Montrose area,
Mhm.
and I think it's important because a lot of people that's moved here and a lot of people that even live in the city of Montrose don't really understand how important ag is to our economy here in Montrose. It's not as big of economic driver as it used to be, but it's a big economic driver. And
Mhm.
Montrose County is still one of the largest ag producing counties in the western slope of Colorado, and a lot of people
Sure.
don't realize that.
Sure. And there's also been some as I've learned that what was grown here early is not grown here now. So there was kind of a pretty robust orchard. I mean, I'm talking about
Hmm.
in the early 1900s, sort of when the
Right.
tunnel came in, which I want to talk to you about in a minute and ask you about that. But I know there was some robust orchards up on Ashenfelter Hill. There was a lot of orchards that sort of slipped away. Then next there were beets at some point.
Yeah. Holly Sugar was here for
Hmm.
numerous years. That was a big producer here. Was Holly Sugar. They still have, you can see those two white towers down in Delta.
Yeah, yeah.
That's from Holly Sugar
Yeah,
from
which
back
is,
in the
and
day.
so yeah, I mean, we'd always talk about devastating things that happen to a community. I think uh, farmers are so resilient to be able to change crops and morph. And we see some reduction in farms, but there's still a lot of farmers that are pretty darn robust around here and
There
really
are.
making a good living. So there was beets, and then I heard the story about the barley because Coors barley went
Coors,
right.
Moravian barley. We had a contract with Coors ourselves. We raised, like I said, cattle, but we had one cash crop on our ranch was
Hmm.
barley. We raised barley for Coors.
Then my understanding was that, Coors changed their formulation.
Hmm.
They pick up the phone, "Gee, farmer, sorry you built that nice granary, and guess what? We're not using you
We're heading
anymore.
to Wyoming.
So now we have to change again." And then I remember some years back, probably in the '80s, I was out bike riding up on the Spring Creek, and I could smell. I'm like, "What is that smell?" It was broccoli. So then somebody started growing broccoli in some kind of quantity, and that was for I don't know how big of a deal that was, but so that farmers are very flexible in terms of morphing into the next thing.
They are. They're innovative because they have to be innovative to stay, you know, in the farming
Mhm.
business. I think any type of business, if you're not innovating, you're not going to stay in that business very long.
Right, right. If you're not growing, you're dying, kind of thing. So,
Exactly.
so I mean, that brings up. I kind of mentioned the tunnel earlier, and you and I got to go on the tour of the tunnel,
Right.
and we wouldn't have any ag if it weren't for the tunnel, right? So,
We would not.
right. So the water is really critical. So how I mean, should we be encouraging farmers to use different kind of techniques for how they irrigate their field? I mean, speak to a little bit of that. I know you're
I
well.
think a lot of people miss the whole point on how they irrigate in this because we utilize the water numerous times as it drops into one field from a canal, then it goes into tailwater. It
Mhm.
goes into another field. It drops into another set of drain ditches, canals. It goes into another field. Sometimes that water is utilized 6 and 7 times by the time it hits Delta.
Right.
And so it was a very ingenious way of irrigating a valley like this
Mhm.
without using electric power or diesel power to run the big pumps through the big irrigation pivots.
Yeah.
And it's actually probably is effective, if not more effective than a lot of the pivotal type irrigation systems that are around there.
Yeah, and I always, when I think about visionary, we always talk about visionary leaders, and I really think that the original people, number one, that figured out that the Gunnison water from the river could be channeled over here through a tunnel was unbelievable. And then just the idea that people can innovate and change and make sure that they can do what they need to do. But when I look at the infrastructure of the water on a map, it's amazing that people have figured out, because most people don't know that just moved in. This was a desert. There's like nothing
Yeah.
here, and then through this ingenious puzzle of laterals and ditches that were able to irrigate much of, and I'm not sure how many acres of
About 88,000 acres
88,000 of irrigated land here in Montrose
just from
County.
the Uncompahgre Valley water
Yeah.
users. So that's not counting all the irrigated land south of basically Uncompahgre, which is from the Uncompahgre system.
hmm
But yeah, about 88,000 acres.
So yeah, and I mean that's a lot for our county
It is.
considering, and how so that's why we all talk about snow all the time, isn't it? We have to
Mm,
have snowpack.
we do.
So I mean, you'll hear people talking all the time. Do we have enough water? Is there enough water? So
It's important.
it is important. So yeah, I love the way that Mark Catlin describes his dad used to tell him, "Don't ever let the water go off the hill," because
Right.
they wanted to be able to recycle that water and use it for their other crops and things like that. So yeah,
Yep.
it's really interesting. Um, I didn't mention that uh, people can apply online for those scholarships now, can't they? It's open now.
It's open now. You can go to the Promotion Ag Montrose Community Foundation's website
hmm
and apply for the scholarships now.
Right. So, and what's the criteria for the scholarships?
Criteria is a senior going into college and you're going into an ag-related
hmm
business afterwards or
Great.
studies.
Studies. So
Yeah.
so you want to encourage all those FFA seniors and others that are interested, and maybe it's agri-technology or something that they would be interested in doing. That's a nice chunk of change for a
And
kid.
about everything, even if you're going into engineering, that's still agriculture. Everything revolves around agriculture,
hmm
and everything is from medicine to engineering to almost any other field you want to get into. Chemistry
Yep.
can be ag related.
Sure. And I mean, going back to the fair, one of my favorite things at the fair is to see the kids doting on their animals, and they're shampooing them and they're conditioning them. I mean, it's really, for someone who grew up in the military. I mean, we lived on base.
Right.
There were no cows on base, on Air Force bases. So I'm kind of like a jealous ag person, although maybe I wouldn't be if I had to do all those chores that you guys had to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of early mornings.
There's still early mornings, aren't there?
There are.
Doesn't matter. So we do have the West Slope Water Summit coming up in November, on November 14th
Right.
this year, for everybody, so that they can come. Then that's where we bring water professionals to come in and talk about how we are affected in Montrose County by either a low snowpack or a heavy snowpack, but being very dependent upon the water. And I think that's where I like to explain to people that we really do live in a semi-arid desert here. Before anything was here, it was just weeds and, I don't know, scrub brush. What do you call that? Ironweed and stuff.
Chico.
Chico.
Yeah, greasewood.
Yeah. So and then as soon as the water came in, then everything started to be able to happen. So I feel very fortunate. Do you see any? I mean, when you look big picture for the county's role in ag, do you see anything that we could do in the future as we move forward
I
and
think
before we're done?
very short time. No, I think we're doing what we can to make agriculture easier for the farmers and the ranchers and educate the community. I think that's one of the biggest things a county can do or any government can do is educate the people on what's involved in what's going on in their community and in their region and in their area. What's the
hmm
culture of agriculture? Uh, it's funny how somebody will talk about, well, he's out there running a tractor at 10 o'clock at night. Well, he's probably baling hay because of the moisture content of the hay
hmm
has to be just right or you start losing the leaves off the alfalfa.
Right.
People don't understand small things like
Yeah.
that.
Well, they're big things. I mean, I
And
think.
it's it's
Yeah.
economic, it's money.
Yeah.
It's money,
And
and people
how
don't realize it.
technical it really is about
Yeah.
when something happens. Like even when we look at the sweet corn, and people will see the sweet corn getting harvested in the late summer, and they only take the first row of the corn,
Right.
right? So the second
Top
row,
ear.
right, the top ear, because that's what's marketed as Olathe sweet corn, right?
It is. That's exactly right. And last year was a terrible year for sweet corn because of this worm that they got into it.
Hmm.
And now they're trying to figure out how they're going to keep the worms out of it this year, so they won't lose their crop this year, because that would be devastating to those farmers that do olate the sweet corn.
Sure. So I know that the uh, ag researchers are always trying to looking for the next kind of a crop that people could do that wouldn't be affected by that. But yeah, farmers have to be out in their fields. They've got to be hands on. I mean, I have such respect for people that choose that way of life, and I think that's awesome for our community.
One of the biggest things, and talking about, things coming at the ranchers and farmers, talking about the worms, also, if you wanted to see where the wolves are now, the ones that are collared, go to cpw.state.co.us, and you can see the map of where the wolves have migrated to around the state. Some of them, they're showing them south of I-70 now,
Oh no.
and plumb up into Wyoming. Some of them almost in Larimer County now, plumb over to Moffett County. So they're spreading fast. So
Hmm.
that's something that the ranchers are going to have to contend with as time goes on, because they're going to release more wolves in the state of Colorado, thanks to the voting public of the state.
Right. Well, mostly on that side of the mountain,
Yeah.
but yeah, I knew you'd figure a way to put wolves into this conversation.
I think it's a topic that we really need to address, and I am pleased with the way the CPW is trying to mitigate for the ranchers that are losing livestock to
Hmm.
the wolves. Uh,
You think the reimbursements are adequate?
I don't know if they're adequate, but I think they're doing the best they can with what they have to work with.
Mhm.
They were put in this just like everybody else. They didn't choose to bring wolves into Colorado. CPW did not. It was the voter of the state of
That
Colorado
probably didn't understand.
that didn't understand what
Yeah.
they were voting for.
Yeah, I have a theory about wolves and these animals that are more predatory in nature. Is that we've been watching Disney for so long that everything was like cute little wolves, and
Uh,
remember what I mean. Mutual of Omaha. Do you remember Wild Kingdom? Did you
oh
watch
yeah, I
that?
remember that
Yeah,
when I was a
yeah.
kid.
That shows you
Sunday afternoons, I
that kind
think.
of puts us in an age group here.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything was like cute little animals, and I think that it's like everything else. And not to make this about politics, but we really need an engaged public when we're talking about when decisions are made in your community that affect the ag environment, or people's public safety, or whatever it is. I mean, people really need to be engaged in what's going on at the legislature, because it affects their life right here in the county.
Perfect examples. I've been on the last 2 days. I've been on legislative calls with Colorado Counties
Hmm.
Incorporated. There are organization that supports counties in the state. And there was two bills right now, Senate Bill 24-165 and Senate Bill 164, about air quality and also air quality enforcement. And in both of those bills, they need to be amended because they left agriculture out. So if you have some older equipment out there, they're going to make it where you can't use that older equipment on the farm or the ranch.
Right.
And they're going to try to get those amended because the legislators that are there now have no concept of ag. They don't have
Hmm.
no concept of what's it take to run a farm or a ranch. And so that's why we're there trying to, help them make better laws.
Right. If they would listen, and I think it's interesting. We Mark Catlin is our House rep here in our district, and he farms and
Yeah.
has been for years. His generations of his family have farmed. Senator Simpson down south of us,
Yeah.
also a farmer in Alamosa. It really pays to have legislators understand these issues and elect. We need to elect people that know what their communities are about and what's important to those communities. So yeah,
Uh,
I know those older diesel. I mean, how many farmers, as we lose farms, how many farmers are going to be able to go out and buy a $500,000 tractor because it's electric or something, or less? I don't know.
with the profit margins like they are right
Yeah,
now, not very many.
yeah. So I think again, a population that's really important to us in this county gets hammered again from that perspective. So, not to make this a downer situation, because I mean, it's still fun to go out on the farm and see what's going on and see how people are making their living. And I really want to thank the producers. I think that they've done a heck of a great job in terms of our local area, and they really need support. And I know that we had one local sheep rancher that came in to talk about the depredation of wolves, and
Right.
was concerned about would they have enough money to find people that could actually watch for wolves? So are you telling me that I could go online and I can see if there's a wolf in my backyard?
You can see where a wolf's been in the state of Colorado
Okay.
because they're tracking the collars on the wolves or how
Hmm.
they're doing it, and the wolves are spreading quite rapidly too. The last map that came out was, I think, the 27th of February, so they're probably due to have another map out here pretty quick
Hmm.
to see what the movement has been since the 27th of February
So
to
even
now.
they want to live on the western slope.
They want to live everywhere.
Yeah.
They're moving to the eastern slope too,
Wolves
which
live
really
wherever
doesn't.
they want.
That's true,
Yeah.
but
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, just in closing, what do you what would you like to say about ag and how it's been the impact it's had on your life?
It's basically set up how my life is right now. Everything I've learned and done as a child was based on agriculture and coming off the ranch and the farm with that culture, with that set of norms and mores. That's something that I was always raised with. Where a handshake still means something.
Hmm.
Somebody's word means something. And I think we've lost a lot of that in our community and in our society today. Another thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see the people that are moving in here from wherever they're coming from, California, the Eastern Slope, learn something about your neighbors, learn about agriculture, be
Hmm.
part of the culture, learn how a rancher does his business, learn how he takes care of business in his community,
Right.
and not come in here and try to change them, but understand what agriculture is
So
about
get to know a
first.
farmer.
Get to know the farmers and that lifestyle.
Yeah, I know that some of our neighbors were upset because when the farmer was plowing the field and he turned around, he left some mud on the road, and I mean we have mud here, we have dirt, and
Mm.
so that's part of the deal,
It's
right?
part of the deal. You
Exactly.
live up on the mesa, you're gonna have mud on the road.
Which is a great segue to just chat real quickly about the Code of the West. And many counties have adopted that, as did we. And can you talk just a little bit about what would be in the Code of the West? So this would be for new residents that are moving to our area. If you aren't used to agriculture, read about the Code of the West. It's on our website, and you can download the information. But it talks about a lot of things. Could you share some of the
Yeah,
stuff
some
it
of the
has?
things it's like, you know, you'll have dogs barking when they're working cattle and stuff. You'll have calves bawling when they're, bellowing when they're being weaned from their mothers. They beller on all night. There'll be smells that you're not used to. There'll be mud on the roads. There'll be planes out spraying at
Hmm.
5 o'clock in the morning. They'll be side dressing corn at 3 in the morning.
Hmm.
They'll be working in the hay fields at 10 o'clock at
Right.
night. That's part of agriculture. That's part of a lifestyle. That's part of a industry.
It's part of Montrose County.
It's part of Montrose County.
Yeah.
And I think one of the groups of people that can help us most with that is our realtors. If they would give our Code of the West pamphlets out to the people that are moving here, that would be a big improvement for everybody that's moving here.
It would be, I think, and it's funny because my mom and dad, when they first moved here, my mom was from New Jersey, which is a garden state. They
Yeah.
have ag there, but she used to get out of the house and wave to Felix when he would fly over the field that was that we share in our little neighborhood,
Mhm.
and so that's the kind of it's that appreciation that we'd like to see countywide for our farmers and our producers and our ranchers. At least that's what I think, and I feel like you do too. So, yes. Well, thank you for taking the time off those busy lobbying calls to chat with me for a little bit.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I
Yeah,
appreciate it, and have a
yeah.
great weekend.
Well, wait, I got to say something now.
Oh, sure.
So I hope you learned something about ag today. Our last county talk podcast was with Nala, the airport dog, which was not really boring, but it is important. If you have questions, you can reach out to countytalk at montrosecounty.net. Until next time, I'm Commissioner Sue Hansen, and it's been a pleasure to chat with Commissioner Caddy here. And we'll see you next time on What's the County Talks, boring but important.